What is going on, Bengals fans? Chris Daughtery here with Bengals Breakdown by Chat Sports. If you watched our last video, you know by now that Stone Shields is no longer with us here at Chat Sports. Went off and he's doing some other things. So I'm going to be filling in for him for the meantime. Who knows? Maybe I'll continue to do some of these Bengals videos here with you guys. But coming up here on today's show, we are breaking down the entire unofficial Bengals depth chart. They released that on their website, and there were a couple of surprises on there that we're going to talk about here on today's show. Before we get into that, though, make sure you guys like today's video for me. We're going up here against Joey Peterson in the Ravens rundown, and I know we haven't been doing as much content as those guys with kind of the transition from Stone to me to who knows, whoever might else be doing the hosting here at Bengals Breakdown. But we need to make up a lot of ground here in August. The season is about to start. So if you guys hate the Ravens, make sure you guys like today's video for me right now. All right, let's get into it here. We'll start off on the offensive side of the ball at that quarterback position. No real surprises here. Joe Burrow, he is the man. He is the quarterback one for the Bengals. And then Jake Browning is going to be quarterback two for the Bengals this year. I think Jake Browning is a pretty decent, when you're talking about backups, I think, he can come in if something happens and at least, do a decent job for the Bengals. Obviously, he is no Joe Burrow, but that's what you have there as the starting quarterback 1 and 2. And then for the quarterback 3 position, you had this listed as an or. Desmond Ridder and Payton Thorne. Obviously, Desmond Ridder's got a little bit more NFL experience. Payton Thorne obviously coming in out of Auburn here. I'll be completely honest, I'm an Alabama fan. Payton Thorne played for Auburn. I did not think he was very good. Maybe that was an Auburn issue at the end of the day, but we'll see what happens here. I would assume that the Bengals are probably going to take 3 quarterbacks on this roster. If I were to guess right now, if they were doing their cut downs right now, I would assume that it would be Desmond Ridder there, but when you're talking about QB3 on this team, you really just at the end of the day need a body just in case, tragedy hits in those quarterback 1 and quarterback 2 spots. Over to the wide receiver room now. I've got the starters listed on the left, and then I have their backups listed on the right. Obviously, Jamar Chase, Andrei Iosivas, and T. Higgins are the 3 starters this year at those wide receiver spots for the Bengals. But then after that, Jermaine Burton, he had just, I'm not even going to call it up and down. He just had a down year last year, with all the situations that he was going through, getting evicted, getting, other things that he was involved in. Obviously lost a lot of trust with this coaching staff, and seems like he's been doing some of things correctly now. So we'll see what happens on him. Not really going to, hold out on that. We'll see what happens. And then Charlie Jones, man, if that guy can stay healthy, I really, really do like Charlie Jones. And then Isaiah Williams as well. He was listed as the 3rd backup there behind T. Higgins. And if you remember too, Isaiah Williams, he can also play some special teams. He played, return a couple of times for Cincinnati last year. Had 11 punt returns, only 93 yards. But on kickoff returns, he returned 4 kicks for 133 yards. That's averaging 33 yards per return. That's pretty decent. Also had a long of 43. So when we're going through some of this stuff, remember, some of those special team spots could make or break making this Bengals 53-man roster. And then the 3rd wide receivers here, you got Kendrick Pryor, Rashad Owens, Cole Burgess. Yeah, look, these guys are going to be battling for a roster spot here for the Bengals. Maybe they're trying to also make the practice squad as well. But, I think, if I'm not mistaken, I believe the Bengals kept like 6 or 7 wide receivers last season. I think it was actually 6. So, these guys are they're going to be battling. Maybe, if somebody like a Jermaine Burton messes up or, Isaiah Williams doesn't, do the right things that they want him to, maybe one of these guys could make the roster as well. But we will see. If I were to guess, I would assume that the Bengals take 6 wide receivers this season. So let me know here at the pinned comment of today's video, how many wide receivers do you think will make the Bengals 53-man roster? Let me know what you guys think down at the pinned comment of today's video. All right, next up, let's go over to the tight end spot. This was my first little question mark for the Bengals here. They had Drew Sample listed as the tight end 1, and Look, Drew Samples might be the best blocking tight end for this team, but he's definitely not the best tight end on this team. Mike Gesicki and Noah Fant are way better than Drew Sample was last year. That just is what it is. They also had Tanner Hudson listed as a backup, Cam Grandy, and Tanner McLaughlin also listed as backups there. And if you guys remember, unfortunately, Eric All Jr. will also miss the entirety of the 2025 season. And like I said, when we're talking about the starter versus second, it's not like it really matters at the end of the day. Everything's kind of, interchanging when it comes to that, just, depending on what the Bengals want to do on any particular play. But in my opinion, when you're talking about starters, especially in this Bengals offense that is very pass heavy, I would assume the guy who has more production it should be your tight end one. And that is obviously going to be Mike Gesicki. There's this conversation. Is he a tight end? Is he a bigger slot? At the end of the day, he is a tight end. That's what it is. And then they also signed Noah Fant as well. He had 48 catches, 500 yards last year for the Seattle Seahawks. So, in my opinion, I think Drew Sample is tight end 3, to be honest with you. But if you're going on, blocking tight end type stuff, then I guess he could be tight end 1 for you. But at the end of the day, in my opinion, I think Mike Gesicki is definitely your tight end 1, especially because you paid him in the offseason as well. All right, so let me know. Who do you guys think will be tight end 1 this year for the Cincinnati Bengals? Type DS if you think it's going to be Drew Sample. Type MG if you think it's Mike Gesicki. Or type NF if you think it's going to be Noah Fant. Like I said, I think it's going to be Mike Gesicki or Noah Fant, one of those two guys. But let me know what you guys think down in the comment section of today's show. All right, let's go to the offensive line now. And I don't think anything really, totally surprised me on the offensive line. You got Orlando Brown Jr. there at left tackle, Amarius Mims at right tackle. They have Lucas Patrick right now. You signed him in the offseason as well, listed as that right guard. Above Cody Ford. So that might be a little bit of a, competition right now. The one thing that interests me really was the fact that they had Dylan Fairchild over Cordell Volson there. I know there's a lot of Bengals fans that do not like Cordell Volson. He obviously took Fairchild in this past year's NFL draft. So if he is going to indeed be your left guard this season, it's probably a good thing that he is getting those starter reps here in training camp. One more very interesting thing that I'm going to be excited to just continue to monitor here is Seth McLaughlin. He was cleared, for contact and for practice and everything like that. You signed him as a UDFA, and obviously, UDFAs don't always, get starting playing time, but, he was the best center in college football last year for Ohio State. So, we'll continue to see, is it Matt Lee? Is it Ted Karras? Is it going to be Seth McLaughlin? He was listed there as, that or designation for center 3. So I'm not saying that Seth McLaughlin is going to, end up being a starter for the Bengals this year, but I would not put it past him to possibly, maybe next year even become the Bengals starter at that center spot. Over to the running back spot now, you got Chase Brown as your starter. Samaje Perine listed as the backup there. And then Taj Brooks listed as the third backup. Gary Brightwell, Kendall Milton, and Quali Conley also listed as backups there. When it comes to running back, I think you just need a little bit more from these guys. Everybody really does like Chase Brown. I think Samaje Perine could be better. We'll see if he can kind of contribute a little bit more for the Bengals this season. But, I think you're probably going to take 3 or 4 backs this year. It's going to be a battle there for some of those backups to see who ends up making the roster. All right, we'll continue here for the defensive side of the ball here in just a second. But you guys can get this Bengals hoodie, shirt, whatever you want to call it. They are on sale right now. They were $55, now on sale for only $33. Just go to chatsports.com/Bengals hoodie t-shirt, and you guys can get that deal right now over on Fanatics. Like I said, it was $55 originally. Now it is only $33. Probably want to get it right now as well, because once the season starts, I would assume that it's going to go back up to $55. So just go to chatsports.com/Bengals hoodie t-shirt. I'll put that link down at the pinned comment of today's video. I'll also put it in the description around the second paragraph down there as well. All right, let's flip it over to the defensive side of the ball. Now, I've got this set up to where you have your left defensive ends on the left, and then you have your right defensive ends on the right. Currently, as the starters, they have Myles Murphy and Joseph Osai as the two starters for those defensive end spots. And, you know, obviously, you would like to see Shamar Turner, the guy that you picked in the first round, at one of those starting positions, but he is a little bit behind because they had all that contract situation, just, you know, Bengals doing Bengals things with that. And same with Trey Hendrickson as well. I mean, he's a top 3 player on this team. You have Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, and Trey Hendrickson, in my opinion, are the top 3 players there. And, you know, I understand that he is under contract, and the Bengals like, you're under contract, you know, whatever. But, look, Trey Hendrickson deserves to get paid, and hopefully he does before the beginning of the season. I think he said yesterday that he was willing to sit out until he got paid. So, you know, he definitely is going to be one of your starting defensive ends. That is if the Bengals end up paying him what he rightfully deserves. Make sure you guys are subscribed right here to Bengals Breakdown. We will be live tomorrow night for our first watch party of the season. Bengals versus Eagles, first week of the preseason. I'm going to be the host for you guys. We're also going to have Billy and Aiden in here as producers as well. So do not miss out. Come join our Bengals versus Eagles preseason watch party. Hit that sub button right now. It's youtube.com/BengalsTV. Let's go over to the interior of this defensive line now. And I think, you know, from last year, in my opinion, yeah, your secondary was really bad too. We'll get to them in just a second. But, man, the interior of your defensive line was also just not very good at all. You could not stop the run to save your life. And I'll be honest, I just really don't think they upgraded at all on the interior of the defensive line. Hopefully you can get some of these guys like McKinley Jackson and Chris Jenkins Jr. to step up a little bit. Maybe B.J. Hill could be a little bit better than he was last year. But I just, you know, at this point, I really don't have a ton of confidence that, you know, from last year to this year, that the Bengals upgraded at that position. Now to the linebackers. The Bengals listed 2 starting linebackers here. Logan Wilson, that's really not a surprise at all. But then you also had Demetrius Knight Jr. that you also selected in this year's NFL draft. I thought it was very interesting that he was up there as one of those starting linebackers for you. Obviously, you know, you're having to replace some people as well, but you know, you also took Barrett Carter in this past year's NFL draft, and you know, there are some guys I thought, you know, maybe not in that starting caliber quite yet, but I really was impressed last year with Muma John Mehta when it came to last year's preseason games. I thought he played really well, but these 2 guys listed as the starters there, and I think Muma John Mehta is, you know, out of these listed backups right now, he's probably one of the guys that I am the most excited for his future. I think he really does come in and just bring some juice to that Bengals defense. Obviously, when you're coming in as linebacker 3 in the preseason or, you know, whatever he was doing last year, obviously you're not going against the best, you know, competition at the end of the day, but I do think he brings another element to this Bengals linebacker room. He also signed Oren Burks as well during the offseason, so we'll see what happens, but, you know, I would assume that the Bengals probably, you know, 4, I would assume, linebackers, maybe even a 5th linebacker. We'll see what happens there, but that right there is what you have listed as the backups at that linebacker spot. Now the nickel spot. I know, you know, I was talking to Tom Downey earlier, one of our Cowboys Report host here, and he was talking about Dax Hill listed as the starter here at this nickel position, and he was not a fan of it. And, you know, Dax Hill kind of had an up and down year last season. I know a lot of people were, you know, kind of excited about a guy like Josh Newton as well. We'll see about Jalen Davis, but, you know, you got to get more out of Dax Hill as well. And it's something that I'm going to continue to say about this Bengals defense. Pretty much every single position groups, you have to have those starters. You have to have those leaders step up, because if you're just constantly in these, you know, 35 to 38, 42 to 45 type of games. That's not a recipe for success at all. Hopefully as well with, the change at your defensive coordinator spot, hopefully, that can be a little bit of a fix as well. Maybe it was just the system that Lou Anarumo was going with last year, but the Bengals really didn't change much on the defensive side of the ball. So hopefully that change of system and maybe even development of some of these players can help them as well. Now to the cornerback spot, kind of the same thing we've been talking about here. Cam Taylor-Britt, DJ Turner are still your starting quarterbacks this year. It's just not much new I can say, to be honest, when it comes to these cornerback spots. I thought there were, positions of need that you could have hit in the NFL draft that they just decided not to hit to get better at. And, cornerback, safety, we'll talk here in just a second, were two of those position groups. You really didn't do anything in free agency there either. So I don't have a ton of confidence in this Bengals cornerback room. Like I said a second ago, hopefully the development aspect of some of these players is something that maybe helps them this season. So let me know, just overall, in general, every single position group on the defensive side of the ball here for the Bengals. What is your confidence level in the Bengals defense right now before the first preseason game? Scale it for me 1 to 10 down in the comments. 1 on the low end, 10 on the high end. I got to be completely honest with you guys. I'm probably like a 3 or a 4 right now, but maybe there's some optimism among some Bengals fans out there. But let me know what you guys think down in the comment section of today's show. Stop me if I've said this one before. The Bengals didn't address their safety spot at all. They had Malachi Starks right there, ripe for the taking in the NFL draft, and they decided not to take him. They decided to go with Shamar Stewart over him. Fine, whatever. That's the decision that they made there. Geno Stone was up and down last year. Started off really bad, and then had that injury, but then came back, had a couple interceptions as well. So maybe, he can just kind of build on that. I like Jordan Battle, but, same thing. He's got to be better than he was last year. And one of your backups there as well, Jalen Keys, I know he played for Alabama as well. He also played that nickel spot a little bit for Nick Saban's team there at Alabama. So maybe even Jalen Key is a guy that can go over to that nickel spot as well, depending on what the Bengals really want to do with him. But I do know, he played more safety in college. So we'll see what happens there. The Bengals picked him up here in the offseason as well. But, man, this Bengals defense as a whole, I thought they could have done a lot more in the NFL draft, in free agency. I guess we're just going to have to wait and see how things really shake out this season.